There are three things in life that are for certain. That's death, taxes, and Dragapult being a good deck in the format. And today I'm going to teach you how to actually play Dragapult, as it is one of the best decks in the format, and it probably will be until it actually rotates. Today we're going to be going over an introduction, the matchup spread, the deck list, a few statistics, and future thoughts on what I think the deck is going to look like, or how it's going to perform in future tournaments, such as the World Championships. That being said, this video will be formatted around the World Championships, and that's what I'll be focusing on, because I know a lot of people that watch my videos are trying to get better at the game, so even if you're not attending the World Championships, if you do plan on playing Dragapult in the next few months, then this video will be helpful. Today specifically, we're going to be covering the Dragapult Dusknoir version of the deck. A quick introduction of Dragapult if you don't already know what it is. Dragapult has been a meta deck ever since its first victory over at Dortmund, and fortunately, or unfortunately, if you don't like Dragapult, this deck won't be going anywhere. We saw it place top 4 at NAIC thanks to Tord, and it placed top 16 at JCS, the Japanese Championship, and multiple top 32s. Most of these being the straight version, however there were a few top 32 placements that was the Dragapult Dusknoir version. On top of that, we also saw, I'm pretty sure, a top 4 or a top 8 for Dragapult Charizard at JCS as well, and that's the thing. Dragapult has so many variants, with all having their perks, and yeah, today we'll be just taking a look at the Dusknoir version of the deck. This deck is the version that I've put the most time into, and the one that I'm the most comfortable with, so I decided to make a guide on that one. And the Dusknoir also allows for players that are unavailable with the straight version, and allows you to clear opponents' boards before they can actually set up. This, paired with Badoo, allows us to have decent matchups into Stage 2 decks, while slowing down their board and building up our own. If you guys play any Stage 2 decks, you know that the weakness of these decks can be the consistency of the decks and actually being able to set up. So before we take a look at the deck list, we've tried to maximize consistency with this deck to make sure that you're able to play as many games as possible, because when you go to a big event like an IC or a regionals, if there's one thing you'd want your deck to be, it would be consistent, because you're playing so many games, you'd want to actually be able to play the game in most of those rounds. So here's a deck list. I don't know why it has put the Dusknoir line at the bottom, but I guess it separates it, which is cool, I guess. So we're playing a 4-4-2 split of Dragapult with a 2-2-1 split of the Dusknoir line, and then the other Pokemon in the deck are 1 Monkey, 2 Badoo, Ursaluna, Latias, Fez, and Hawlucha. The nice thing about the Latinas in the deck is you're able to maneuver in that early game to and from Badoo, so if you start a Dreepy and you don't really want to attach and retreat, you can get the Latias on the bench and kind of maneuver around. It is very nice to have, especially in that early game, and we do play double Turo to actually pick up all of your liabilities, such as the Latias, such as the Badoo at the end of the game, and such as the Fez. That is the nice thing of playing the double Turo. People might think it is quite heavy, especially for a Dusknoir version of the deck, but I think the thing is you do play kind of similar to the straight Pult version of the deck. It's just you have that extra step of aggression, being the Dusklops and the Dusknoir. Against decks like Gardevoir, if you're able to set up a Dusklops and a Dragapult before they're able to find a Gardevoir, you can just basically take out both of their Curliers or Routes or whatever, and make sure they can't actually set back up into a Gardevoir. And if they do find a Gardevoir and only have one bench Routes or a Curlier, then you can pop the Dusknoir into the Gardevoir, pop the Dusklops into that Curlier, or just Hawlucha the Routes. And then using Counter Catcher probably, which you play 3 of, you can take out that Gardevoir and the Routes or the Curlier, preventing them from having access to a Gardevoir or anything like that in the following few turns. So there are a few techs that I could consider in this deck, that being the Maractus. Maractus is great against matchups like Raging Bolt, against these really aggressive decks where you can kind of just slow down the game and force them to slow down as well, because obviously you don't play Ray Candy or anything that you can use to pop out of nowhere and attack, as you just have to go manually evolve from Dreepy to Dracloak into Dragapult, manually attach your energy. Same thing with your Dusknoir, you don't have Ray Candy there, you need to manually evolve, so sometimes you just need that extra turn or two, and with the Maractus, you can get yourself that extra turn or two by gusting up a Noctowl or a Latinas or a Fez and getting that trapped in the active and just getting that stuck there. So Maractus is a great card, and I think it definitely can see a lot of play in Dragapult. It does see a lot of play in the straight Dragapult. I just right now don't have much space for it. However, this list isn't really a end-all be-all deck list. Like, all of these techs have great merit to them, and you can change the counts around. Like there's even a shout to cut the Dusknoir lines and just play a 1 Duskull, 1 Dusclops line, because that does help with a lot of matchups as well, and still has that same idea against evolution decks, being able to pop it into like a Ralts or a Curlier and then take out both of their Ralts or Curliers that turn. The Dusknoir just helps a little bit more against the Evo decks when they finally do evolve, especially against decks like Grimmsnarl and stuff, where we don't really want to leave damage on the board. We can then pop the Dusknoir into the Grimmsnarl, Phantom Dive for 330 essentially, taking out of the Grimmsnarl and not leaving damage on the board, and then pairing that with the Phantom Dive damage and Hawlucha, we can also be taking 3 prize turns, very often utilizing our bombs. Speaking about the bombs, another tech we can include is the Reversal Energy. Reversal Energy might sound really weird in this deck, but Dusknoir actually has a great attack, that being 150 damage, and during your opponent's next turn, that Pokemon can't retreat. And if you think about it, this attack almost hits the perfect number, because when you try and gust something up to prevent it from retreating, it's usually either a Latias or a Pheasantipede or cards like that, and then if you Shadow Bind them for 150, they're left with 60 HP left, meaning Dragapult now can come in, Phantom Dive something else, and then put the remaining 6 damage counters on the Pheasantipede that you trapped with the Dusknoir the turn previously, and that's great, because if your opponent is playing Latias and Pheasantipede, it's quite often where you can take 6 prize cards in one turn, because you can just go Shadow Bind the Fez, Shadow Bind the Latias, and then like Counter Catcher up a Ogerpon, and then you can use your Dusclops, pop that into the Latias, you can go Hawlucha, ping the Fez, ping the Latias, which now kills it, and then you can Dusknoir the active Ogerpon, because you still have the Dusknoir in play, and then you can take 6 prize cards in that turn. So the Dusknoir attack is actually incredibly strong, and can be used in a lot of different matchups, such as the Crustle one. It actually just one-shots the Crustle if you have Jamming Tower in play, which is also really useful, because not only can it tank a hit, then it can pop the ability, and then after that, you can Night Stretcher it back for another Dusclops and pop it again. So the attack is great, especially when paired with its own ability. You're essentially swinging for 280 damage if you think about it, because you can do your 150 into like a Pidgeot or something. Pidgeot can't kill you, and then you can just go Cursed Blast and actually add that 130 extra damage onto that Pidgeot, taking those 2 prize cards. So it is a really, it's a bit of a niche attacker, but it is a really strong attacker when used correctly. Another card I could recommend would be the Hilda, because you're playing such awkward counts of energies and no real way to actually find the energy other than drawing into them naturally. Hilda can be an extra way to find that energy, and if you find the Hilda, you can also now search for an evolution such as the Dragapult or the Tricloak, and also the Neo Upper Energy, which is also a very strong combo, and sometimes this can be better than the Brock Scouting, because Brox obviously is great to grab your basics Pokemon, but if you're already going to be using Brox to grab the evolution Pokemon, you may as well be grabbing an energy with that evolution Pokemon. If you feel like consistency might be a problem, or you just lack the stadiums to bump other decks like Terra decks that play multiple stadiums, or Grimmsnarl, and you're just constantly losing the stadium war, another card you could add would be the Artisan, which does add consistency, and it also helps you find cards like Monkey Dory, which otherwise you have to either Brox or Ultra Ball for, which doesn't feel great. So now Artisan can actually just get you that Monkey Dory, which is quite nice, and it also just adds that extra layer of consistency. The second monkey is a great card as well, however in this deck it is quite difficult to find space for the second monkey, so I would consider adding the second monkey if you go down to a 1 Duskull, 1 Dusclops line and don't play the Dusknoir. That opens up more space for cards like Maractus and cards like Monkey Dory, cards like Shaman, as then you're leaning more towards a straight Pult build with that option of that extra little bit of damage with the Dusclops, and with double Monkey Dory you are improving your Dragapult mirror match and also the Grimmsnarl match, which are 2 big decks in the format. Like Dragapult is obviously still a top 3 deck, and so is Grimmsnarl, and then the other one being Gardevoir, with Raging Bolt kind of being in and out. Quite often he's in and out, so we'll kind of give it a top 4. Those are the top 4 decks, and having one card that improves the matchup into 2 of them, it can also improve the matchup into Raging Bolt and Gardevoir. Gardevoir a little bit less, because I feel like good Gardevoir players won't leave damage on your board. But with the Raging Bolt matchup, if you have double Monkey Dory, Maractus becomes a lot more powerful, as you can trap stuff in the active, such as the Fanrotom or the Noctowl, and you don't have to worry about your Maractus dying to those Pokemon that you trap there. Shaman is another great card, also against the Raging Bolt matchup, as Raging Bolt does play the Baby Bolt, and Baby Bolt can very easily target down your Duskulls, and that can be quite annoying, because if you aren't able to get multiple Duskulls out or evolve them into Dusclops quickly, then they kind of just die. And honestly, in that matchup, you don't really want to be giving up free prize cards as you are on a timer, but the Maractus, if you do end up playing that, can help with that as well, and so can the secondary Munkidori, thanks to that Maractus. Looking at some statistics quickly, I like numbers. I used to be a coach in esports, and I loved playing with the numbers. And the numbers don't lie. And if you ask me, these are some pretty nice numbers. I just thought that people would comment on how there's only 2 Dragapults in the deck and that a 3rd Dragapult feels a lot better because what if you prize both Dragapults? Well, the probability that you prize both Dragapults is just over 1%. So 1 in 100 games. And I would much rather prefer that 3rd Night Stretcher over that 3rd Dragapult, because Night Stretcher can be a lot more versatile rather than the 3rd Dragapult, especially when in most games you are only using 1 to 2 Phantom Dive attacks, let alone 1 to 2 Dragapults. Looking at the numbers of starter Pokemon, the odds you start with a mulligan are 16%, starting with 2 or more basics is 56%, starting with at least 1 good starter would be 88%, the good starters being the Dreepy, the Badoo, the Duskull, the Munkidori, and maybe the Latias. I didn't include it in that, but yeah, there's only like 3 bad Pokemon that you really don't want to see, which would be the Fez, the Ursaluna, and the Hawlucha. Starting with only a bad starter is 1 in 10 games basically, and then having a supporter in the first 8 cards, this is being, I didn't include a boss in the supporters, this being a Brock or an Iono or a Research or a Hilda would be 77.52%, so most of the times you will be seeing a supporter in your opening hand, especially when you go second, which is very important when you choose to go second most of the times. And then the odds of you starting specific Pokemon would be 48% of the time you would be starting Dreepy, 26% of the time you'd be starting Badoo or Duskull, and then 14% of the time you'll be starting one of your one-offs. And the odds of starting a Buddy Poffin in your opening hand is 44%, and after an Iono, it increases to 64%. Now, let's take a look at some of the matchups. First matchup we'll go over is Grimmsnarl. Grimmsnarl has been gaining momentum in the meta as it has a good matchup against Gardevoir and a pretty good matchup against Dragapult, as it is a great abuser of arguably the best card in the format currently, Munkidori. So, potential techs for the Grimmsnarl matchup would be Shaman, to prevent that little bit of extra ping damage that Grimmsnarl gets, or just that second Munkidori. Second Munkidori is probably a better tech, as now you have more Munkidoris to actually fight in that Munkidori war, and that's basically the benefit, is that if you both have 2 Munkidoris established, you are the better deck, as you are dealing more damage and spreading more damage, which is a nice thing, and Frostlass is just sitting on their bench and ticking both of your Pokemon, right? Dragapult doesn't get ticked, Grimmsnarl does get ticked, and so do the Munkidoris. So the Frostlass is helping both players, and it is also a detriment to both players, because it's ticking on both their Pokemon. It's ticking on your Dracloaks and your Munkidoris, and it's ticking on their Munkidoris and their active Grimmsnarls. So if you're able to set up double Munkidori in this matchup, the matchup becomes a lot better for you, as the double Munkidori are constantly combating all this extra ping, and if they swing for 180 and you have double Munkidori established, and you're able to take out, let's say, both of their Munkidoris in that turn, then Grimmsnarl can't return KO you, because they're doing 180 damage to you, you're moving back 60, and then next turn, if they don't have access to extra Munkidoris, they're only doing 180 back, which leaves you on 20 HP left. So it is a very nice swing turn to be able to maybe move 6 damage counters into one of the Munkidoris, leaving it with 50 HP, then gusting up another Munkidori, and then killing both those Munkidoris in the same turn. If you have a Dusclops, you can also pop the Dusclops into the Munkidori, or even just pop the Dusknoir into the active Grimmsnarl, then take out the Grimmsnarl and the benched Munkidori. So yeah, there's quite a few ways you can actually move around this matchup, and the double Munkidori does help quite a bit. The current list I'm playing is actually deviating more towards the straight Pult line. However, I do really like the 1-1-0 line of the Dusclops, as I think it opens up a lot more lines in matchups, and a lot of these matchups that are like maybe a little bit unfavored become a little bit more favored for you with the 1-1-0 line of the Dusclops. So this matchup can be difficult for us if they outspeed us in the early game. Just like most EVA matchups, we want to focus on Badoo in the early game, avoid benching cards like Fez and Latinas, as they can be targeted by Maractus and also easy prizes for Grimmsnarl. Good Grimm players usually won't allow you to have Fez, as they'll try and take knockouts with the damage tick from Frostlass. If Badoo is able to slow them down enough, we can try set up a Dusclops plus Gust to take out the Grimmsnarl line. If we do this, it's really difficult for them to get back into the game as our own Monkey Dory and Hawlucha can keep denying Grimmsnarls. If they're able to set up a Grimmsnarl and have multiple Monkey Dories on bench, you want to avoid swinging into the Grimmsnarl if you're not killing it, while you build up your Dusknoir. I'd recommend gusting around it and taking out the Monkey Dories and the Frostlasses. If you're able to take out the Frostlass and not leave any damage on the board, their deck basically becomes a worse Dragapult. If you do set up a Dusknoir, then try to board wipe their Grim lines. This can also be a good line of play. Keep in mind that they don't have built-in consistency, unlike you, which has built-in Cloaks, and they are vulnerable to Iono spam mid to late game. Moving on, we've got everyone's favorite pile of bulk. Shout out Raging Bulk players. You guys are the real ones for giving us easy matchups. Raging Bolt is and always has been a decent deck. Its recent success in Japan's JCS shows that it is still a contender. The deck does have two variations, and today we'll be talking about the Noctowl version, which is the preferred version in the West due to the BO3 nature of the game. The potential techs for Bolt would be Shaman and Maractus I think can put a lot of work into this matchup, as like I stated in the intro, Maractus can be really good at getting things stuck in the active, such as their Noctowls, their Fairs, their Latias, their Squawkabilly, and if you're able to trap these kinds of things, it's really difficult for them to be able to, one, move them, or two, deal with your Maractus, as they don't usually play Turo anymore and they only have one Prime Catcher, so it is nice to just go behind the prize trade and then just constantly use all of your Gust. You have access to so much Gust with the triple counter catcher that you can, for example, get a Latias stuck in play and just Maractus it for a while, and then after that you can Gust something else up and get that stuck in the active for a while, and just spread damage with the Maractus, and then come in with a Dragapult and just Phantom Dive to board wipe. However, this play does take time, so I would recommend making sure you know what resources they have available to themselves and also what resources you have available to yourself. Like, do you have enough Gust to pull the play off? And if you are playing a best of one, it is better to start this quite early because it is quite easy to go into a tie when going for these kinds of plays. Especially if you lose game one, I wouldn't recommend going for the Maractus stall play, as it can be actually very difficult for you to close out the second game and then go into the third with a chance at actually winning. So if you're a slow player, I would recommend going for the strat ASAP and just make sure you have the utility to pull it off. This matchup can be difficult for us, especially if they were to start sniping with Baby Bolt from the get-go. If we can survive the first few turns, usually we should be okay, as Dusknoir allows us a game plan that only requires 1 to 2 Phantom Dives. Badoo with Iono early is strong, as they might not be able to find Noctowls to set up. If we're able to get into a position for a full price turn with the likes of Lucha plus Noir and a Phantom Dive into something like Pon, Hoothoot or Rotom, or Pon, Mew and Squawk, as long as we execute this before they take free prize cards, we can close out the game with Ursaluna. Sometimes we don't need the Lucha, as Badoo can do the 10 damage for us into a Pon, a Fez, or the Latinas. So there are a few ideas in this matchup. We can go the 3-3 route, essentially, which is very possible for us, as they do play these lower HP Pokemon, such as the Hoothoot and the Fanrotom, and with a Hawlucha, pinging both of these, it is very easy for us to take these out. I recommend taking out the Hoothoot first, because the Hoothoot can evolve into a Noctowl, so it has a lesser level of permanence on the board compared to the Fanrotom. If we are able to take 3 prize cards, for example on a Mew and a Hoothoot in the beginning, and then towards the end of the game we can reuse our Hawlucha with a Turo, we can ping it back down and then go counter catcher up a Latias or a Fez, and then take that out with the Fanrotom and just go 3-3. And if this is not possible, then usually we're going to be going 2-2-2 with, well, probably 0-4-2, as we're going to go Phantom Dive for 4, and then Ursaluna to close out the game. This is also a little bit easier with Dusknoir, as Dusknoir does let us take that 4 prizes a lot faster, because what we can do is we can go Dusknoir into a Mew EX or a Squawkabilly, and then we can go Counter Catcher up and making sure we had damage on it beforehand with either a Hawlucha or a Badoo ping, take out an Ogerpon, and then also that Mew or that Squawkabilly that was on the bench already, taking 4 prize cards that turn. Then we can kind of just chill for a little bit and then just go Ursaluna to close out the game, as most Raging Bolt decks don't play the Bravery Charm anymore. A little tip that you can look out for in this matchup is if they use Bellowing Thunder in the mid game and don't have energy on Bolt after that, going into Badoo plus Iono is really strong, as they can't Gust and power up Bolt in the same turn, meaning at worst you're just going to get a free turn to set up and they're just going to kill the Badoo, or at best you buy yourself 1 to 2 extra turns. And now we talk about everyone's favorite BDIF. Pokemon's favorite little love child, because she just keeps getting whatever she wants. This fraud over here has been gaining a little bit too much love for my liking, however this love might be its downfall. The introduction of Jellicent means Gardevoir is not playing much Badoo and they're moving to play Klefki instead. We do however need to be careful of the TM Devo. Potential techs for Gardy, I don't know why that second monkey is there, that shouldn't be there, but it will be the second Jamming Tower and the Maractus, as the Jamming Tower is quite strong against Gardevoir because if we take a look at some of the jelly lists, they do play a lot of tool cards, and the Maractus is great as they don't play many switching cards. So if you are able to trap stuff like a Monkey Dory for a bit or a Featherndipity, you can also buy yourself quite a few turns. The problem is with Gardy is that the new Jellicent lists try to focus on a slower version of the deck as well and attack with the Jellicent. However, it is difficult for them to pull off if, like for most EVO matchups, we can slow them down in the beginning of that game. Gardy does want to TM Evo or Rare Candy, and if we can prevent this with the likes of Badoo, then it is very difficult for them to actually close out the game as they're just not going to be able to get into the Gardevoir. So this matchup is similar to the one of regular Gardevoir, however we now have many more ways to close out the game. Early game we want to focus up on building our Cloaks and Clops and going for routes and Curlier. That kind of board wipe is great as we can pivot back into Badoo after this to build up our Clops again and prevent them from using Rare Candy. If they TM Evo or evolve into both their Curliers and we take out both of them and then pivot back into Badoo, it is impossible for them to find a Gardy or a Curlier until they take out our Badoo, as they can't use Night Stretcher to get back the Curliers, and they can't use Rare Candy to get into their Gardevoirs. So Badoo is incredibly strong if we go for this kind of play, as they literally just cannot get back into these without manually attaching to an attacker and getting rid of our Badoo. So this should buy us a lot of time to set up the play again, so that when we do allow them to get their Curliers back into the deck or their Routers back into the deck, and then start setting those up again, then we can just go straight away Phantom Dive, take them both out again. Similar to the Grimmsnarl matchup, if they're able to get into Gardy, we need to remove it with Dragapult as the priority, because our main way of winning the deck is by running them out of resources and making sure they don't have a Gardevoir to power up their really strong attackers. At the end of the game, we can use Dusclops with the Ursaluna to actually take out Jellicent, because the Jellicent has 270 HP, and Dusclops paired with Ursaluna does 290 damage, so it is very easy to price cards for us if we have access to those cards at the stage of the game. And unfortunately for Gardy, due to their lack of refinement routes, loser, you don't have a built-in draw engine anymore. However, we do, so they are more susceptible to Iono spam in the mid to late game due to the lack of a actual draw engine. Hold that, Gardevoir, huh? No draw engine? Loser. Alright, the Pult Mirror. Unfortunately, the Pult Mirror, if they are playing the straight Pult, can be very difficult, as essentially their deck is just a more streamlined version of our deck. However, if we are able to set up before they are, then we can kind of shut them out of the game completely, because they don't have the access to the Dusk Noir. Something that you'd have to be careful of in this mirror match is actually benching your Latinas and the Fez and that kind of stuff, as they do play Maractus and they can trap that very easily, and then after that it is quite difficult for us to get that out of active if we don't naturally draw into our Turret scenario. Potential takes for this matchup would be the actual Enhanced Hammer. Enhanced Hammer is quite cool, if you ask me, because essentially if we're able to get rid of their Dracloaks and they only have a Dragapult with a Neo Upper Energy, then on that turn that we get rid of both Dracloaks, we can then get rid of that Neo Upper Energy as well with the Enhanced Hammer, and then they have no energy on board, so even though they have a Dragapult, they don't have a Phantom Dive response the following turn. The problem with this is that it can be difficult to find the Enhanced Hammer. If we are playing a Arven build, then I can recommend Enhanced Hammer, but Enhanced Hammer is more of a niche, kind of very specific tech for this matchup. I would rather play something more like the second Monkey Dory, or if you do opt to play the second Turo, even a Switch or a Mist Energy. Mist Energy is quite nice because if you do really want that Fez in play, then you can bench the Fez, put that Mist Energy on it, and then you don't have to worry about it getting trapped by the Maractus, or also you don't have to worry about it getting pinged by the Phantom Dive. But the problem is it does take up your attach for turn, and that is something that Pult doesn't really have too much of, like too much freedom of, being the energy. Like you always have to attach for turn. That's the main issue with the deck, is that you always have to attach, because we don't have a energy engine. We only have Neo Up energy, so that is the problem. Also, the second Monkey is great because if we're able to set up double Monkey, this matchup can become incredibly favored, even if they are the more streamlined version of the deck. Because essentially, they're going to be Phantom Diving onto us, and then we're going to be moving that damage right back onto them and just taking knockouts everywhere. Similar to the Grimmsnarl matchup, you kind of, if you do have the double monkey established, and so do they, no player really wants to swing into a Dragapult. You kind of want to gust around it, and the problem is that they play a lot more boss than we do. We play 2 to 3, whereas they almost always play 4. So they will win in the gusting war. So the thing is that if we're able to set up faster than them with the Clops and the Noir, we can also just shut them out of the game by just preventing them from actually evolving into Dragapults. If you do go for a Noir Clops play, I would recommend probably not rebenching them, as it is a very easy prize card for Dragapult players to take towards the end of the game, as obviously your Duskulls have 60 HP, as it's very easy for Dragapult to kind of sit there and be like, okay, cool, I'm just going to go, you know, 6 damage counters on your Duskull, and that's a free prize card. Another thing is that they play double Turo, and we don't want to allow them to be able to get a Turo play onto their Depult, so try and target down those Recloaks, or if you're attacking the Depult, make sure you're either OHKOing it or make sure they don't have a follow-up attacker to Turo into. What I mean by that is make sure they don't have a Recloak on the bench with an energy already attached, or if no energy, make sure they don't have access to the Neo upper energy, either it being already attached or something like that, because if you just swing into a Dragapult and they're able to Turo it up and then just attack with a healthy Dragapult, now it's very difficult for you to come back from that position, because essentially they've just removed an entire turn of your Phantom Dives, and if they have Monkey Dory on the bench, they've essentially now removed your Phantom Dive and have also put more of that damage on your board. So it literally would have been better for you to announce pass, shout out Riley McKay, than actually attack in that situation. Obviously you can't, but that is the problem with the Turo, as sometimes they can just kind of poof, there goes the damage everywhere, and then now you're on the back foot. For the final matchup today, we have one of my favorite decks, Dogbox. And Dogbox can be difficult if they play cards like Waterpon and Pidgeot. So the problem is with these cards is Dogbox is very susceptible to the kind of disruption, because they are a Noctowl kind of deck, and if they don't have access to Noctowls, they don't have really access to the engine. And if they play Waterpon, we don't really play answer to that, being we don't play Shaman. So if they do Waterpon us and they don't have liabilities on the bench, we kind of just lose, unfortunately. The potential techs in this matchup would be the Maractus, because similar to Raging Bolt, is that they do play those kinds of liabilities that we can gust up and trap there for a while. Another thing is that they play the Sylveon, trap something up after they go Angelite, and then from there we can just rebuild up our board state and then kind of go from there. We do also play the Dusk Noir, like we said, so it is quite easy for us to get these multi-price turns, these 4-price turns, with a very similar game plan to the Raging Bolt matchup. Another card that we could consider here would be the Mist Energy, as with Mist Energy we can prevent them from Angeliting our Pokemon back into the deck, which is quite important. And then also a Devo, because if we're able to go 200 into the dog that evolved from the EX, and also 5 into their benched EV that has the boosted evolution EV, and if we go Devo the next turn paired with like an Iono, they probably won't have access to a Terra the next turn, and it's very difficult for them to come back in the position. Even though Devo sometimes might suck because you're not taking prize cards, but that Devo is still counting for 3 prize cards, which is super nice. So that is one of the pros of running the Devo in that matchup. Also, Defiance Band can actually get you a lot of value in this matchup, being that Ursaluna can swing for 270, and if you take a look at Leafeon or Flareon, or even Sylveon, the HP of those Pokemon is 270, meaning Ursaluna can come in and just kind of take a very easy knockout, and there's a good chance they won't have a good answer to that, because if you do take out a Flareon, after that they don't have anything in the deck that can actually swing for 260 damage. The closest they can get to that would be 230 or 240 from either Leafeon or Terrapagos. And from there, Ursaluna can honestly just take another prize card with Turo and then free retreat with the Latias and taking another 2 like that. So the Ursaluna is very important in this matchup, and I can definitely see it being used quite often, especially paired with a Dusclops. It is very nice because let's say they have a board state of 2 dogs and you're still behind on prize cards. You can then go Ursaluna and then take the 2 with Defiance Band, and the next turn Turo up that Ursaluna, and then evolve a Dusclops and pop 15 to the active evolution, and then take another 2 with the Ursaluna. So Ursaluna is a great attacker in this matchup. In this matchup, you definitely want to target down the Terrors and the Hootoots, as the Hootoot is their entire engine. If you spam Badoo in the beginning of the game, obviously they can't set up their Pidgeot, and they probably won't want to set up their Pidgeot after you started spamming the Badoo, because it's just a 50 or 60 HP Pokemon that is very easy for you to take extra prize cards with when you announce Phantom Dive. So we do also have to be careful of the Briar play, because Dogbox is one of the best decks in the format that can currently abuse Briar, because they have constant access to their deck with the Noctowl. Alright, if you guys enjoyed the video, please do subscribe and like, it really helps out the channel, and we do have a Discord. If you guys have any questions, if you have any questions about your favorite decks, or just how to improve at the game, then I will leave a link below to the Discord server. You guys can come over there, ask questions, and everything like that. For now, thanks for watching, and peace.